Alright, I've been meaning to get to these games for a while now, but I just couldn't find the time. But now since school is over, for me at least, I think I'll be able to manage. I just want to make clear that I won't be looking at these three games, not Jak X or Daxter, because I don't have Jak X at the time, and the emulator I used to play PSTP games isn't really working right now, so that's gonna have to wait for another day. And Lost Frontier is just... So yeah, anyway, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Jak and Daxter Marathon. Jak and Daxter is a 3D platform game released back in 2001. The people behind these beauties, Naughty Dog. For those who were born in the early to mid 90s, you probably remember Naughty Dog from the Crash Bandicoot Trilogy on PS1. Those games are awesome, and I can't wait to see what game they have in store for next. Nowadays, Naughty Dog is known for amazing series like Uncharted and The Last of Us. Uncharted is a fantastic series with gorgeous backgrounds and great characters, while The Last of Us is Naughty Dog's attempt at a more serious and gritty story, which is why I love that game. Honestly, it's one of my top 5 favorite games of all time, and I can't wait to play a sequel. After making a great trilogy of games and even a pretty solid kart racer, Naughty Dog no longer owned the rights to Crash, so Sony's new console was coming out, and Naughty Dog came up with a new IP which development lasts for 23 years, and lo and behold, Jak and Daxter. You know, when you really think about it, this isn't really any different from Insomniac Games, Spyro the Dragon, and Ratchet & Clank. Anyway, when I was younger, I played the hell out of these games. I even collected all 101 power cells and all 2,000 precursor orbs a dozen times. They were great 3D platformers back in the day, some better than others, but I digress. And what I really love about doing these reviews is looking back at the games that I used to love as a child and see if they hold up to my standards of today. Anyway, we start a story with Jak and Daxter on a speedboat to Misty Island. While they're there, a lurker comes out and attacks Jak and Daxter. Jak throws a bomb at him, causing Daxter to fall in a pit of dark eco. Daxter pops out as a Pokemon, an odd soul, and then they come back to Samos to figure out how to turn Daxter back, but because he has a white Santa Claus beard, he just turns into old and cranky. Kira, who at least can learn a lot from.
Rule number 1, I don't date animals.
You don't know what you're missing.
Tells them to collect power cells from the villagers in Sandover Village. This is where the story just kind of pauses. It can be summed up as collecting power cells and precursor orbs and going to another location. As we go on the volcanic crater, Golemaya revealed that they're going to make a giant robot to destroy the world. Jak and Daxter ain't having that shit, so they go to the Citadel, save all the sages, they weaken the robot, and the duo take them down. And it's really sad because Gull is the only one who can change Daxter back to his normal state.
I'm doomed.
By the way, if you collect all 100 precursor orbs, which really isn't that hard to do, you get a secret ending showing you what's inside of the secret precursor door.
It's so beautiful.
By the precursors.
The story is short, simple, and to the point. I honestly really enjoyed it, although I just wanted to say that making Jak a new protagonist in a character-driven 3D platformer doesn't really work here, because we all know that teenagers are one of the most quiet people on the planet. Even though the plot's a little bit shaky, the gameplay where the game truly shines. You assume control of Jak, and the name of the game is to jump, collect precursor orbs, collect power cells, and die. The game's kind of structured like Banjo-Kazooie. You're thrown to a level with little direction, you have a set number of things to collect, and you're rewarded for being curious. I really love this kind of level design. In fact, there's no loading screens to be seen in this game whatsoever, not even after dying. I think it's safe to say that this might be one of the, if not the first open world platformer. Jak 1 really did the best job at making the world feel interconnected. As soon as you enter a next level, there's no loading screens, you're just there. What I really love about this game is the sense of discovery. Like when you see a trail of precursor orbs, you're already at another level. The pace of the game isn't interrupted by any loading screens, which appears in literally any other game ever, or in Forbidden Jungle where you just walk inside of a tower and you're sitting in a whole new level. There's a similar feeling with the final boss too, and what's really cool is that sometimes what you do in one level affects everywhere else. Anyway, Jak himself is pretty versatile when it comes to combat. He He can slide punch, which doubles as a slam attack and an uppercut, roll, do a long jump, and do his best Bandicoot impression. While Jak is capable of taking on 2 or 3 enemies, but any more than that, Jak's not very good. In ambush sections, when every time Jak hits something, there's a timing window which leaves you vulnerable for a couple of seconds, and to add an insult to injury, every time Jak dies, Daxter likes to tear him down to come up with the quip with that oversized mouth of his.
I'll say something really teary at the funeral, like, "How am I gonna get change back now?"
But to remedy this problem, there are eco powers you can experiment with. The blue ego makes you run faster and open up precursor ore vents and jump really high. The red ego makes your attacks faster. Yellow ego turns you into Super Saiyan, and green ego increases your health. Jak also has pretty good and precise movement. He doesn't feel too heavy while at the same time not feeling too light, and when I die, it feels like it was a mistake I made. I can't say I've been a victim to collecting patrols. Now let's get on to the main collectibles, Power Cells. Power Cells are your end goal objective. You can get one either by riding a zoomer, collecting all 7 scout flies, completing a certain platforming challenge, and almost everyone in the town has one for absolute bullshit reasons. This guy has a Power Cell for his re-election campaign. This girl has one for scientific research. And that's where the precursor orbs come in. Think of them like the musical notes from Banjo-Kazooie or the gems from Spyro. Moneybags, you greedy bastard. What I really like about going for some of these precursor orbs is just exploring the environments. I mean, I just found these trail of precursor orbs by complete accident. You can give these to people to help them with their problems. There's also these oracle machines that give you 200 precursor ores in exchange for 2 power cells. Anyway, you can ride a zoomer, which can be fun at times, but it can be a little bit frustrating to handle. You can also ride a bird called a Flet. Why does that sound like a brand of cereal? Anyway, that's fun in every level that I've seen. You know, all 2 of them. All 9 levels, well 10 if you count the All-Might Citadel, are pretty fun all things considered. The bosses are honestly just pathetic. They're just way too easy and just lacking in 2 personality. The only boss that I liked was the final boss, but it's still way too easy. While the game is pretty fun, the game's a little bit too short and easy. If you're fast enough, you can beat this game in 6 hours, even if you collect all 100 precursor orbs and power cells. But the short play kinda helps it in his favor. The game can get a little bit repetitive with just collect power cells here, we have some memories here, go Super Saiyan here. For PS2 standards, these visuals look gorgeous. The level aesthetic has really nice textures and the draw distance looks so great. Although playing on a widescreen TV makes some things come out a little bit pixelated, but it's really easy to stop what you're doing to just look at the view. The character models, on the other hand, have not aged well, especially compared to later games in the series. Back in 2001, these may have looked great in its time, but some of the faces these characters make are just hilarious. Yes, Daxter, I'm looking at you.
What?
The soundtrack isn't really as memorable. I mean, it's not a bad soundtrack and it fits most of the levels, but I can't really remember a lot of them. I really like songs like Mountain Pass's theme, which is pretty good, and the nostalgia theme, which is Sandover Village. My favorite theme will have to be the final boss with Galamaya. It's well composed, so in conclusion, this is probably one of the greatest PS2 games of all time. While the game is pretty short and easy and has a couple of frustrating moments, Jak and Daxter doesn't really do anything wrong as a platformer. The worlds are bright and colorful, the platforming is precise, and it's all just all around a great game. The game even went on to sell 15 million copies, spanning 2 direct sequels and 2 spin-offs. What about Lost Frontier? I have no idea what you're talking about. It's nice to see that Naughty Dog managed to create a whole new world without making the first game so frustrating to 100% complete like Crash 1, and even got that Red Greatest Hits label, which I honestly don't get why people hate so much. Why does my copy of Jak 1 have the Greatest Hits label disc, but not the Greatest Hits label case? Why is Samus green on the back? Oh guys, Jak and Daxter is a pretty funny game. It has aged remarkably well. I really recommend you guys pick this up and see what this game's all about. Now I want to know what you guys think. Jak and Daxter look like a good game to you? Have you played it? And what are your memories with this game? Let me know in the comments below. So now we have this game over there. Next time on the Jak and Daxter Marathon, we're going to be looking at Jak 2. Hope you guys look forward to that. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see y'all next time. Peace. Hey guys, we're back to the Jak and Daxter Marathon. Last time we looked at the Jak and Daxter Precursor Legacy. I thought it was pretty good, even though it was short and easy, and you could power through it in 6 hours, even if it's your first time. There were some problems with it, but hey, what they got right, they did right. So now we're going to be looking at the sequel, Jak 2, also known as Jak 2 Renegade in Europe and Australia. First, there's Jak and Daxter Precursor Legacy. It did well for Naughty Dog and it went to sell well. A sequel was bound to happen, but what were they gonna do? What could they add to the game to make it different enough to not dip in quality? Well, let's pop this game in and see. Now this game is drastically different compared to the last game, mostly in tone and gameplay. This game just added guns, missions, and driving. I've always found it kind of weird how Jak 2 got a PG rating in Europe but got a T rating in North America. Anyway, when I first played this game a few years back, I absolutely hated it. I just thought it was too hard and I didn't like the guns, but that was years ago. Maybe my opinions have changed. And we'll start off with story, but first, spoiler warning. If you haven't played this game yet and you want to, or you already know what's going on for a while now, please skip to this part of the video. I'll give you 5 seconds. If you collected all power cells in the last game, you get a small little cutscene that shows you a door glowing. In this game, it showed as the Precursor lift, so Kira tinkers with it to set it up. Jak presses a button and...
Hey folks, viewer mail time again. Oh, here's one from Sally, age 14. Dear Pig, aren't you interrupting the story at the most suspenseful part? Well, the answer is yes, Sally. Yes, I am. Keep those cards and letters coming.
I want on this thing! Find yourself, Jak!
After that happens, the gang gets split up and Jak and Daxter arrive at a town named Haven City. Literally seconds after, people show up to take him away. Daxter craps himself and runs away to starting his own PSP spin-off game, and Jak gets taken away. A whole 2 years has passed, and the Baron has been pumping a dark ego into Jak for all those years. After Daxter gets tired of having his own adventure, he comes back to Jak. Jak gets so excited, he says his first words.
I'm gonna kill Praxis!
What the heck was that? Sheesh! Remind me not to piss you off.
The two bust out of prison and meet a boy and a man named Core. After beating up the Crimson Guard with a K, Core tells Jak that there's an underground fighting against the Baron. For them to get into the underground, they need to steal the Baron's flag. This is kind of where the story just pauses. Anything from now to their first boss is just filler. Jak and Daxter find out that the Baron is meeting up with the Metalhead leader. He pays him an ego to keep the Metalheads out the city. Later on, we found out that Haven City is actually our world, but in the future. This kid, who is apparently the heir to the throne, has to go on some trials to prove himself worthy. He's too young, so Jak does it himself, and finds the Precursor Stone at the end of the trials, which is the best level of the game. But Praxis finds it before we do, and plans to break it open. The destruction has left the crew, who just died to an explosion. Jak and Daxter return to the city, only to find Metalheads are still there. It's revealed that Core is actually the Metalhead leader, so he destroys half the Baron's forces, and Jak and Daxter confront him for a final showdown. Before dying, he actually reveals that the boy is a young Jak, which honestly just raises so many questions. Anyway, instead of Jak, Daxter, and Samos going back to their own timeline, they send young Jak and young Samos, which makes a lot more sense if you play the game for yourself, back to the hut. Daxter now owns a bar, and they live the rest of their lives in Haven City. The story kind of drags and sometimes feel like it's going nowhere, but I honestly really enjoyed it. While Jak 2 adapts well to its dark tone, there's still a lot of humor to it and doesn't feel out of place. All the characters in this game are way more engaging than the pieces of wood in the last game. Samos and Kira return from the last game, but there's also Torn, who's the second command in the underground, Arrow, who just kinda shows up at Jak's rival in the racing section of the game, but then offs himself off for losing the last race, Sig, who is a metal hunter slash wastelander, Tons of Fun Kuru, who gives us most of our gun upgrades, Ashlyn, the Baron's daughter, who has really nice facial tattoos, Tess, an even bigger advocate of bestiality than Princess Elise, Vin, the paranoid scientist, and Onan and Pecker, the wise woman that Pecker translates. Like I said, sometimes the story feels like it's going nowhere, but the cutscenes and the characters' interactions really make this world feel more alive than the first game, and they're just great to watch, especially with the graphical upgrade. The first game's gameplay style can be compared to Banjo-Kazooie's structure, Jak 2, Grand Theft Auto. Okay, let's start off with what's more similar to the first game. Jak has his old moveset back. He can slide punch, long jump, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Because of the Baron's experiment, Jak can turn into an alter ego called Dark Jak. Dark Jak makes mincemeat out of enemies. You get stronger melee attacks, and he's just all around faster than regular Jak. I'm sure you notice whenever you kill a metalhead, some yellow orb pops out. These are called metalhead orbs. If you collect a certain amount of metalhead orbs, you can take them to the Oracle machine and it gives you powers to effectively use Dark Jak. like a punch explosion, a death tornado spin, and it also makes him invincible. It isn't until an hour in the game where you get your first gun. Adding gun gameplay to a series where the first game didn't have any? Where have I heard that from before? Okay, all jokes aside, the gun gameplay actually fits in better than you think it would. There are 4 guns that you can use. There's a scatter gun, which is pretty much the equivalent to a shotgun. Its range is pretty short, but it does deal with small enemies. The morph gun, which is the gun you can spin around to shoot multiple enemies, which we'll probably be using a lot. The Vulcan Fury, which fires faster but with low damage. And the Peacemaker, that shoots a lightning bolt that stings enemies at the same time. All the guns have their uses in the game, but you'll probably use the morph gun because A, has the best range, and B, you can shoot it multiple times. While you'll probably get used to the gun gameplay, this game is pretty hard, more towards the end of the game, but I will get to that later. Anyway, Jak control is the same as the last game, so pretty much flawless. The enemies are always ganging up on you and there aren't a lot of invisibility frames, so don't be surprised if your health drops to 0 really fast. And to top it all off, Naughty Dog forgot what checkpoints are, so if you made a lot of progress and you died either from enemy placement or mistimed jump, you have to start all the way from the beginning. And what's annoyingly inconsistent is that some missions have well-placed checkpoints and some missions seem to have no checkpoints whatsoever. This is how the game's structured. You grab a car, you drive to a mission marker, listen to someone complain, and then you do that mission. There's also a lot of driving in this game, which I honestly don't know why this game gets so much shit for it. The only time I actually find it annoying is when you complete one mission and have to backtrack to the next marker on the map, only to hear that someone needs something to be done again. While I can agree that some of these cars control pretty poorly, except for the small ones, I don't really mind driving. While missions take up most of the focus, there's still platforming every once in a while. One of my favorite missions is when you solve this cube puzzle. You need to knock these cubes to make a bridge while also taking into account how many cubes are left. It really felt rewarding to finally figure out this pattern. There's also a lot of variety in between each mission. Sometimes you'll be riding a hoverboard, other times you'll be doing motor races, which I honestly don't really mind the first and second races, but it's the final race with Arrow that really grinds on me gears. I swear it's near impossible to make this shortcut without crashing, and on top of that, the other racers really love to grind into you so much. I thought I was playing Jak 2, not Boating Bash. There's also turn sections which are mostly fine, but this one in particular really pisses me off. I swear the first section, the enemy designers decided to spam Crimson Guard everywhere. Sometimes you won't be able to see most of them because you'll be too busy taking on one of them, causing you to fucking die. The last 2 sections aren't really as bad because they focus on shooting at the blimps out the sky, and it didn't spam as much Crimson Guards as the last sections. At least there's checkpoints in between each section. If you died and had to complete the entire mission from the beginning, this mission would be fucking unplayable. While all of these missions are hard, it's kind of fun, kind of hard. When I finally complete this mission, I get a satisfactory feeling when I beat a hard mission. It's kind of like the satisfaction you get when you complete the perfect run from Mario Galaxy 2, or collect all the gems to get the hidden ending from Crash Bandicoot Trilogy. Throughout the first 3 acts, the game's challenge is pretty fair. Sure, there's an occasional massive difficulty spikes, but that pales. It weeps in comparison to all the bullshit I had to deal with in the final third. In fact, this part of the game is so hard, it made me want to do something I've always wanted to do, mainly because to save some editing. Rage mode. This section of the video is going to contain a lot of uncensored swearing, so if you don't like any of that, please skip to this part of the video, so don't say I didn't warn you. I swear, almost every single mission in this last third is just so painful. First is this escort mission with Sig. I mentioned how scarce checkpoints are in this game, but this is where it really starts to piss me off. You have to solve this puzzle and where you have to knock the cubes into a hole, except it blows up. In the last section where Sig gets ambushed, you have to get these cubes in the hole before you die, and at any point, you're sent back to the beginning. Next is this stupid ass boss with Crew. I swear it's impossible to kill these little blobs without getting hit yourself. And when Crew comes down to fight you, sometimes he even blindsides you. And when he blew up alongside with the tower, I said, "Yeah, eat it, bitch!" Then you have to escort these 3 dickheads who can't defend themselves for anything, but have no problem busting a cap on you if you accidentally hit one of them. And that one mission where you have to find the Heart of Mar, where the enemies are spammed left and right, it's especially annoying when you're on the edge of a platform and the Crimson Guard shoots you down, causing you to die. The final race with Arrow is the worst out of all of them. There's a stupid ass mech scene which is slow, it's sluggish, and it's not really suited to combat, which really defeats the purpose of a mech, don't you think, Naughty Dog? The mech is easily the worst part of the game, and one of the missions, they decided to put it underwater. What fucking asshat came up with that idea? Okay, I calmed down. Let's go back to being somewhat family friendly. Anyway, let's go on to the bosses. They are 10 times better than they were in the first game. Especially the one in the second half where you knock all these boulders back at the Baron. The final boss with Core is pretty hard, but it's still a pretty good boss battle. Precursor orbs make a return here too, but unlike the first game, they're spread out through the entire world. Hunting them in levels can be a complete chore to do because they're spread out in the most obscure places. A large portion of them can be found at Haven City challenges, like flying through rings or finding them based off an image. There are a total of 286 Precursor orbs in this game, and I really have a long way to go because when I beat the game, I only had 48 Precursor orbs. When you collect all 286 Precursor orbs, you unlock Hero Mode, a lot harder version of the game. All weapon models are unlocked from the start, but to make up for it, all enemies are a lot harder to kill. So if you didn't thought the game was hard enough before, so try this then. To this day, I still have not tried out Hero Mode, but I have to be really bored to ever consider it. Maybe I'll stream myself doing it. I know you guys love to see me torture myself for your amusement. Graphically, this game looks great to this day. I mean, considering the fact that the first game was already bright and colorful, this game didn't really have to improve on much. Although playing on a widescreen TV does make things a little bit dark, but the game is pretty beautiful, all things considered. The character models have also gotten a great upgrade since the last game. I mean, for 2003, these character models look like they should be on a PS3 game. Daxter no longer looks constipated, Jak has more expressions just why am I with this guy, and even Kira and Samus got a nice upgrade. It's not really in the way of memorable music. I mean, it's not a bad soundtrack, but it's mostly ambience without a memorable beat or riff. I can't really remember any song to save my life, well, except the one we were flying in Haven City, and when Daxter is being chased by Boulder. Voice acting has also been improved since the last game. Mike Irwin does a great Jak, Max Casala is amazing with Daxter as always, and Clancy Brown is great as a Baron. Does anyone else wonder why Clancy Brown voice acting in Naughty Dog games? I've always dreaded the day I had to go back to this game. I've always just thought of Jak 2 as just an unfair, unpolished, and just an impossible game. While Founder 3rd does suck ass, Jak 2 is so far my favorite in the trilogy. Haven City feels more alive than the last game. New characters are way more engaged in the brick walls in the last game, and even though adding gun gameplay sounds like an awful idea on paper, it actually works well in the game's favor. Even with the unfair difficulty at times, I actually recommend this game. It mostly feels good conquering these really hard missions, but I don't really recommend going after all the Precursor orbs. Jak 2 was critically acclaimed when it first came out. IGN gave it a 9.5, Metacritic gave it a 87%, and GameSpot gave it a 9.1 out of 10. Naughty Dog no doubt has some massive shoes to fill, and with only 1 year later we got treated to the last game in the trilogy, Jak 3. That's for next time, so I'm going to do my best to try to play this game as fast as I can, so that I can get the review out by the end of July. So, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.
By order of the Grand Council of Haven City, for heinous acts and crimes against the people, you are hereby banished to the wasteland for life.
This is
Like that's ever gonna happen. What a load of...
Hey guys, welcome back to the Jak and Daxter Marathon. Last time we finished off with Jak 2, and now we're about to finish the Jak and Daxter Marathon with Jak 3. This game doesn't really have any original names, so yeah. Anyway, Jak and Daxter Precursor Legacy was just a pure platformer. The open world level design of the game, well, I mean, at least as open you get on the PS2, was really innovative for its time, and its type precise platforming really makes it one of my favorite PS2 games. Jak 2 just went balls to the walls, added missions, cars, and weapons. Like I said in the last review, Jak 2 was critically acclaimed when they first came out. There was 9s and 10s flying everywhere. Naughty Dog knew that they had something going, so how could Jak 3, one of the most hyped up sequels for its time, live up to its absurdly popular predecessor? I mean, the same thing could be said about how Jak 2 could live up to Precursor Legacy, but Jak 2 left some massive shoes to fill. Jak 3 was first revealed in February 2004 and was released in November of that year. When I first played the game, I was blown away by the graphics and gameplay. I also loved playing with the cars when I was younger. This game has been a lot of people's favorite Jak game, but does this game still hold up today? Well, as always, let's start with the story. First, spoiler warning. If you know what's going on or you haven't played the game yet, please skip to this part of the video. I'll give you 5 seconds. Jak 3 starts off after the events of Jak 2 when Jak defeats Core the Metalhead leader, but the Metalheads find a new leader and KGB death bots are spread left and right throughout the city, and the people start blaming you even though you saved their lives in the last game.
What an asshole!
Count Vigor banishes them into the wasteland to die out there. After losing consciousness, they wake up in a town named Spargus, a town where they take in people who are banished from Haven City. Damus, the king, says to earn his trust, they need to collect ancient artifacts and fight people in the arena. The story doesn't really make any progress while you're in the desert until the third act. That's just how it is in every Jak game, people. But it's the final part of the game where the story really starts to pick up. Anyway, it's revealed that Arrow is the main bad guy, the same Arrow who offed himself at the last race in Jak 2, and he's the one sending all the KGB death bots. And we also find out that Dark Makers are actually precursors who have succumbed to Dark Ego and became evil. And the sun is also the Dark Maker's ship, and is heading to Earth, and the only way to stop it is to go into the Earth's core to destroy the Dark Maker's ship inside. Damus comes to ride along with us, but seconds after...
Yo, holy shit, he dead!
Anyway, Damus dies, and also revealing the completely obvious bombshell that Jak is Mar, who is also Damus' son. I mean, it's never really explained if he's the Mar that made Haven City, or his birth name is just Mar, but... I mean, this would be a pretty touching moment if the game didn't make it so painfully obvious. Anyway, Vigor tells Jak that he's gonna become a precursor, and conveniently, there's 2 cars waiting for you, one for you, and one for Vigor. Vigor finally gets to fulfill his wish to become a precursor, and it's also here we get to meet the precursors. Ooh, everyone's been asking what the precursor is for 3 games now, and now we get to finally see them. Oh, this is gonna be so cool.
We are unhappy with your performance. If you had been a true hero, you would have stopped Arrow by now.
Oh my god.
So apparently the precursors have been assholes this entire time, and also means that Daxter is a precursor too. Vigor finally gets his wish to become a precursor, which just means turning into an asshole. Jak is teleported to the Dark Maker's ship to destroy it from the inside. After doing so, Arrow, yeah, remember him, has the Dark Maker's ship set to a crash course on Earth. Jak eventually stops them, and Jak and Ashley share a kiss off screen. The precursors offer to show Jak the whole universe, only to jump out at the last second. Oh, and also, just to make everyone happy, Tessa's turned into an asshole, so her relationship with Daxter is only 15% less weird. I know I did a pretty good job in the story, and in my opinion, it's the best in the trilogy. While it doesn't really make any progress while you're in the wasteland, definitely picks up by the final third. While there aren't as many new characters as Jak 2, they're all still pretty interesting. I honestly really love Vigor as a villain. I just love how he's so far possessed to realize what he's doing is wrong. It's kind of sad that he's just a side villain in favor of Arrow. He just wants to destroy things just for the sake of chaos. There's also this scene thing. I mean, I don't know what gender it is. I mean, Daxter calls it a monk boy, even though it's voiced by Tara Strong, so...
Heroes think they can save the world when they themselves are lost. You could not possibly understand the dark forces at work here.
Don't talk to me about dark powers. I want to know what this is. Stand back.
While some of the characters are pretty interesting, Jak himself is pretty flip-floppy when it comes to his motives. And at first he says he doesn't care about Haven City, even though seconds after the last cutscene, he's back in Haven City, almost enthusiastic about it. Then he says he has his own interest, even though said interests are never really explained. He also managed to ruin Kira too. In the last 2 games, she was just a love interest, and she was cast aside for this game for Ashley to be the main love interest. I mean, she only has like, what, 2 or 3 lines in the entire game? I mean, what the story lacks in characters, I think makes up for dialogue. I mean, the first 2 games had pretty good dialogue, but I think this game outbeats the first and second game. I mean, listen to this.
You are still here?
Yeah, we thought we'd hang out, catch some rays.
This isn't a game.
So yeah, there's not a lot in the way of character development, but I think Jak 3 did the best job, story-wise. Now let's get on to the gameplay. I mean, Did you like Jak 2? I mean, I'm sorry to bring it up, but these two games are pretty much the same. I'll keep Jak's part simple. For the third time in a row, Jak has very fluid control. Okay, let's start off with what's different from the last game. First, this game introduces cars. It's already in a desert where you have a select number of buggies you can choose and drive, and they all have their own abilities, like shooting missiles, barrages. There's the one that does a huge jump when you release R1. All this does sound like a lot of fun. Driving in cars is one part of the game that has not aged well. All the buggies have really bad handling, and when there's rocks everywhere, it's really easy for you to spin out of control. And on top of that, there's also these assholes who are trying to kill you at any turn they get, and they don't really have any ulterior motives. Their sole purpose is to just make you miserable. They're really just a bunch of jackasses. Oh wait, I didn't mean to make a pun. Anyway, there's also new guns added too. They'll still use the Scattergun, the Vulcan Fury, the Morph Gun, and the Peacemaker, but they get 2 new upgrades. Some of them are pretty useful, while some of them might be a little bit too overpowered for their own good, like the Beam Reflector. This is an upgrade for the Morph Gun, which bounces off of enemies. There's also the Plasmite RPG, which explodes anything in a 10-mile radius. The Mass Inverter slows down time and floats enemies everywhere. The Arc Wielder is basically a one-shot hit for enemies. You also get new Light Jak powers. There's the Flight powers, which helps you fly great distances, the Regeneration powers, which helps you gain your health back, and the Time Freeze powers, which can be useful, but are pretty situational. There's also the Shield power, which I honestly forgot was in the game. Light Jak is pretty useful in some sections. I usually use the Regeneration power when my health is really low. Dark Jak makes a return too. He has new powers like Invincibility, which is pretty useful, but is really underutilized. I just find it crazy that Sonic couldn't get invincibility powers right in 2006, 2 years after Jak 3 came out. Just make the character undetectable from the enemies, but have the outlines visible so the player can see. I mean, Sonic Heroes got that right, and that was back in 2003, so what the hell, Sonic Team? Anyway, Dark Jak can also do this Kameo Wave attack to break walls, which does come useful for some sections where they're needed. Apart from the final boss and sections where I needed to do it and when I pressed L1 by a complete accident, I never really used Dark Jak that much. He made mincemeat out of enemies in the last game because there weren't a lot of combat options. Here, almost every weapon gives the word OP a new meaning. Now there are way more variety in between missions, so many more than Jak 2. Turn sections make a return here, but if you ask me, done a lot worse in my personal opinion. And there are a lot of missions that stick out for better or for worse, and yeah, mostly for worse. Some part of me thinks that Jak 3 has like identity crisis. They're still running and gunning, but there's so many things happening. The Pac-Man section with Daxter can be really annoying. Trying to get these Marauders can be very frustrating, especially with the buggy, slippery-ass controls. There's even 2 on-road shooter sections, and when you get to it in Dark Maker's ship, it's the goddamn mech again. I mean, while these missions can be hard, Naughty Dog has learned from their mistakes. To start, Jak 3 has more of an adaptive difficulty system. Jak 2 was fucking hard, all things considered, so you died in a mission a number of times, the difficulty is toned down. It's also nice to see that Naughty Dog learned how not to be dickheads with checkpoints because there are way more checkpoints than there were in the last game. What's also a pretty funny callback to the first game, that Daxter calls to your face when you die adds more death quotes, although they only happen in specific areas.
This is what happens when they drop my name from the title.
Speaking of Daxter, he has a more prominent role this time around. He's usually used for climbing in certain platforming sections. I thought I'd just mention it. I know some of you would probably start crying if I didn't. The bosses are still good, but not as good as the last game in my opinion. They're all pretty good. My favorite would have to be the final boss. I think it takes advantage of all the skills you learned so far very well. Precursor orbs also make a return here too, and they're even more than they were before. There's now 600 Precursor orbs, and you're probably thinking, oh great, more Precursor orbs out to collect with no true reward. Wrong. Instead of getting a hard mode of what's already an infamously hard game, you get cool secrets like weapon upgrades, director's commentary, cheats and crazy stuff, and a hero mode. I was thinking about streaming that one day. The characters also share funny quips in the model viewer.
That's just all part of the package, baby. That's just who I am. I just gotta reach down inside and...
I hope this game's fun. I mean, I do my part. I'm practically carrying the whole thing, you know. The next game should be called Orange Lightning Strikes Again. Orange Lightning Strikes Twice? You know, I think we should branch out. Shouldn't just feel completely anchored to the whole adventure genre, you know. I think we should be branching out. I got the moves.
I was like, oh my god, I got the part? For real? And I was like, dude, you won't be disappointed. I can like act and stuff. I even took a class. I mean, wow, to be an actress is like so cool. I couldn't wait to tell my therapist.
Well, the thing about Ashlyn is she got a great set of guns. The ones you shoot with. And, yeah, she's good. She's strong, she's intelligent. Yeah, fire in the hole.
Would I be willing to take off more clothes in the next game? Oh, honey, you couldn't handle me with less clothes.
If this game has anything over Jak 2 besides a better story, it's post-game completion. I honestly couldn't care about the Precursor orbs in the last game, but here, they actually reward you for collecting all the orbs. I actually want to collect all the Precursor orbs in this game. Jak 3 is a pretty good looking game for its time. The graphical presentation has been improved even further. Animations are so much fluid, and production values have gotten a huge overhaul. I honestly wouldn't believe this game came out in 2004. I mean, the character models are mostly the same from Jak 2, except that Jak has gotten a new haircut for the third time in a row. But the game is pretty good looking, all things considered. Now, if the game looked like the commercials, that would be a whole nother story. I also love how you get to see the aftermath of what happens to Haven City. The tower has fallen on the left half of the city, and it's been used for a breeding area for the metalheads. Jak 3 also has a pretty good OST. I mean, Jak 1 and 2 had a pretty good atmospheric soundtrack, but Jak 3 managed to make it even better. I can actually remember half of the songs in this game, and that's Jak 3, what people consider to be the best Jak game, the epic conclusion to the Jak and Daxter Trilogy. I'm sorry, I just don't see it. It's a great game, it really is. Like, it's a step up in terms of post-game completion and story, but it feels like a step backwards in gameplay. There's not a lot of platforming in this game compared to the last two games. The missions that are thrown at me can be pretty good, while others are just downright bad. The car's handling are just horrible, and it feels like it has the turning physics of CTR, mixed with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's motion controls. It really saddens me to say it, but Jak 3 doesn't really hold up as well as the first two games. And it's not that I'm calling it bad, on the contrary, the graphics are pretty good for its time, and the story is subjectively the best out of the trilogy by the third act. Besides the much needed drop in difficulty and the more abundance of checkpoints, there really isn't anything different from this game and Jak 2. This game will probably just be seen as the game that people want to play to finish up the trilogy. While I don't think that Jak 3 is on equal ground as Jak 1 or 2, it's still a pretty good game and I highly recommend it. Some sections can be annoying, but the platforming is still tight and precise as ever. And if you don't mind what they did to Kira or Jak being flip-floppy in terms of motive, you're gonna have a great time with Jak 3. And that's the Jak and Daxter Trilogy, all wrapped up. Now, the moment of truth is that do these games still hold up as well as they do in the early 2000s? And I think the answer is already obvious. Absolutely. Replaying all these three games back to back, which is something I haven't done in a while, made me realize that the entire trilogy holds up in their own kind of way. Precursor Legacy is more accessible to the player and doesn't ask too much of you, therefore having a more relaxed experience and a game you can power through in a weekend. Jak 2 is for the more hardcore gamers that love getting kicked in the balls repeatedly, sometimes outright unfair, but still fun nonetheless, and Jak 3 keeps things from getting stale by including a variety of different missions. And yes, I know I spent half of the video bitching about some of these sections, but with a couple of exceptions, the action control really good and any or all deaths are usually your own fault. I mean, adding new gameplay styles aren't usually a good idea. I mean, look at 3D Sonic games. Some games usually tend to shove these kind of levels down your throat, like Wrath of Cortex, but Jak 3's missions don't really feel shoehorned in. The PS3 and PS4 remasters are pretty good, and unless you're a stickler for playing the original trilogy on the original console, get the Jak and Daxter collection or bundle. It's been completely resized to a 1080p format, and it's been completely rendered into 60 frames per second. Now, if you had a PS2 and you weren't playing the Jak and Daxter trilogy, you may be familiar with a certain Lombax and a robot. Now, I know you guys probably want me to look at the Ratchet & Clank series, but this may come as a shock to you, but I never played a Ratchet & Clank game. If I ever decide to review the series, it's only if I decide to play the original trilogy for the first time. Anyway, from here on out, Jak and Daxter haven't really appeared in any other games during its lifespan. There is Daxter, a PSP spin-off game that takes place in the 2 years in between Jak 2, and I was honestly surprised to see that this game has received really positive reviews. GameStop gave it a 9.1 out of 10, and IGN gave it a 9 out of 10, and so on and so forth. There's Jak X, a spin-off racing game that takes place after the events of Jak 3. I won't say anything about any of these games because I never played any of them. Guess I should bring it up. There's also Jak and Daxter The Lost Frontier, a game for the PS2 and PSP, which is often considered the worst Jak and Daxter game in existence. This game completely failed to meet standards by adding in none of the original characters except for Jak, Daxter, and Kira. None of them really act like themselves. Kira doesn't even look like herself, adding airship levels, making the villain boring as hell, and turning Daxter into—
Holy Jesus! What is that? What the fuck is that?
Besides that, Jak and Daxter also appeared in Sony Smash Bros. And Heroes on the Move, and that's pretty much it. Apparently, Naughty Dog was originally supposed to work on Lost Frontier, but they were working on a Uncharted series at the time, so they decided to hand it down to High Impact Games. Wasn't a very great idea, was it, Naughty Dog? They didn't want to work on Jak 4, but it was more grittier, more mature, hence cancel for straying away from the original concept. So right now, it looks like Jak and Daxter is finished, and it really saddens me because seeing franchises like Crash, Spyro, and Ratchet are still alive and well, but Jak and Daxter seems to be dead. You know, I also wouldn't mind seeing Activision reviving the series, or at least giving them the remake treatment like Crash or Spyro. But hey, a man can dream. Now, will I ever get to Jak X or Daxter? Of course. I mean, I've always wanted to play Daxter, but not now though. Before I end this video, I wanted to talk about the Jak and Daxter Trilogy's regional difference from here and Japan, but really, there's not a lot to talk about. I mean, in Jak 2, Jak's goatee was removed because it looked too aggressive. Unlike Crash Bandicoot, which was very popular in Japan, Jak 1 sold well, but because of Jak 2's more grittier and dark tone, sales completely bombed in Japan, and Jak 3 was never released in there, and to my shock, neither were the spin-offs, except for Lost Frontier, but only on PSP. It wasn't until the PS4 remaster when Jak 3 was finally released in Japan. Well, looks like that's it for the Jak and Daxter trilogy. You know, it's weird. I was thinking I was gonna go into this trilogy, thinking I was gonna love Jak 1, hate Jak 2, and have mixed thoughts about Jak 3. That's almost been the opposite of what's happened, so it was worth replaying these games. But it has been fun while it lasted, but it's time to end the Jak and Daxter marathon. I want to thank you guys for watching, and next time we'll be reviewing The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. So I hope you guys look forward to that. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.